straight up fascists. Now, there is a more detailed video to be made on this topic, but I just want to give maybe a broader overview about the ideology driving these people, because it seems to be a mixture of technocracy, which I'm going to talk about, which Elon Musk's own fascist granddad was actually involved in back in the 1930s, and also basically wanting a future envisioned by the philosophy of Ayn Rand. Now, you can see how a lot of these people who claim that Atlas Shrugged is one of their favorite books, they can see themselves in the heroes of that book. It's fair to say their political leanings are driven by the deregulation of things like safety standards in various industries, so there's no accountability in their push for the future where they can basically break all morals or all laws. And a good example of this recently is Elon Musk cozying up with Ron DeSantis. Remember when DeSantis disastrously launched his campaign for president on Twitter, only for DeSantis to later sign a law, I think it's with SpaceX, where Elon Musk wouldn't be accountable if there was safety violations in his company, like he couldn't be personally held accountable. And there you have a direct exchange between two powerful people where essentially Elon Musk has bribed the local government so he can't get in trouble. And all of these people have a very high opinion of themselves, and a lot of them believe they are driving humanity into the future, especially people like Elon Musk. And because we have a technocracy element, they firmly believe they should be the rulers of our society, and in many ways they are. I just want to talk about all of this today. And one small side note, we are going to be talking about Elon Musk a bit, maybe not too in depth, but I'm going to be talking about his ideology in reference to like technocracy and Ayn Rand. The problem is, I've said this in other videos, the more I read the Dune series, I'm pretty convinced Elon Musk's philosophy is actually based on Leto Atreides II. And I think I'm going to make a whole video about that because I've made videos about why he's so obsessed with people having children and breeding. And although that seems to be some messed up kink, at the same time, I'm starting to think of it more in the context of the Dune books and the breeding program in that and the eugenics involved in the series, but I'm going to save that for another video. So before we go any further, follow me on social media, the creations of all these tech geniuses. So check out my Instagram, my personal and my travel Instagram. And if you want to support my work, please check out my Patreon page. I'm trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible. Benefits include early access to videos that you can watch ad-free on the Patreon page itself, and also access to the Discord server. With all of that out of the way, let's get into the video. So although I've wanted to make this video for a while, it is a timely time to make it because of JD Vance being the nominee for vice president on the Republican side. So Wired writing, Elon Musk among tech heavyweights to rally behind JD Vance VP pick. Republican figureheads from Silicon Valley are rallying behind Trump and Vance as his running mate. Top Silicon Valley leaders like Musk came out in support of him as Trump's vice president in the hours after the official announcement was made on Monday. Musk said that the Trump-Vance ticket resounds with victory and called it an excellent decision by Trump. David Sachs, a prominent GOP donor and venture capitalist, wrote on Twitter, "This is who I want by Trump's side, an American patriot." Musk, Sachs, and former Fox News host Tucker Carlson all lobbied Trump over the weekend to choose Vance, according to Axios. The tech industry's excitement over Vance comes as a little surprise. A venture capitalist himself has worked alongside major investors like Peter Thiel and AOL founder Steve Case. When Vance ran for US Senate in 2022, Thiel donated $15 million to support his campaign, and Sachs also donated $900,000 during the Senate election. So just on a little bit of his background, so after graduating from Yale Law School in 2013, he spent time living in San Francisco where he worked at Mithril Capital. That firm was co-founded by Peter Thiel, the former PayPal CEO, who has long been a major giver to Republicans, and of course Peter Thiel and Elon Musk both started PayPal together. So Vance also spent time in Washington, where he worked for AOL CEO Steve Case's venture capital firm Revolution LLC on a project to expand capital opportunities to towns like Middleton, Ohio, where Vance was born. Vance and Sachs helped orchestrate a recent Silicon Valley fundraiser for Trump. The event was at Sachs's home and marked Trump's first visit to San Francisco in years. So, of course, this guy is firmly in bed with the top players in Silicon Valley. Of course, Peter Thiel is the most important in there, but Elon Musk is also buddies with him. And Elon Musk, of course, explicitly came out in support of Trump and has said he has set up a PAC. I think it's going to be worth like $45 million to help get Trump elected president. And of course, do these guys all necessarily agree with Trump's ideology, whatever that really is? Or do they agree with the evangelical base in the Republican Party? I'm guessing no. What do they see Trump as? A vassal for tax cuts and a vassal for deregulation and making it easier for venture capitalists and tech bros to get in good with the US government and hopefully deregulate their industries to make them less accountable to things like unions or safety regulations, which to them, if they believe their own hype and bullshit, will accelerate their own projects. So yeah, the Trump pick to me doesn't seem based on a massively shared ideology. It's just their libertarian politics, which is making them support far-right candidates. I mean, I don't doubt people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk have a lot of fascist politics themselves, but I think this support for Trump is pretty much just transactional. Like most things in American politics, right? Like most of these rich people, it doesn't really matter what they believe. They just support the candidate that will benefit them the most. But the dangerous thing is, a lot of Silicon Valley bros really think very highly of themselves and think highly of their role in the world.
This scenario is
and
kinetic.
I find it funny how much the context has changed in that they used to have some sort of respect as geniuses. Like if we think back to 2010's The Social Network by David Fincher and written by Aaron Sorkin, of course, at the time, people were saying this is a very unflattering portrayal of Mark Zuckerberg, but I actually think it's, in hindsight, a very flattering portrayal of him, and I think it's a more positive portrayal because through the film, you put yourself in his shoes, and he seems like this super smart guy who wanted to do something interesting, right? Not like this massive creep who's only got even worse as time has gone on, and I hope if they make another film, it will make him out clearly to be the villain, which I don't think it went hard enough on in that movie. But also since then, and since the late 2010s, we have had more like villains and people destroying the world who have been inspired by these tech bros. I think of like the Watch Dogs games, all three of them, for having this influence. But I guess the one that sticks out the most, because it literally is set in San Francisco, part of it at least, is the Horizon games and Horizon Forbidden West, where you actually go to the ruins of San Francisco. And I won't spoil the game, but let's just say, in the past, which sets up this post-apocalyptic world of the Horizon games, yeah, the bad guy is someone from the Silicon Valley, which you could easily see people like Elon Musk in, and one of the bad guys in the DLC, played by Sam Witwer, another character you can see Elon Musk, and just tech bros influence in. So it's safe to say the climate has changed in that regard, and that we don't see these people as geniuses trying to advance humanity for the benefit of all of us by inventing social media. We see them for what they are, like power-hungry people, basically just trying to exploit us for money and satiate their own egos, and maybe with some grand designs of society which are inherently fascistic. And one of them, in my opinion, is technocracy and something called the technate. Now, I actually had an argument with someone before about this ideology because they were saying I had it all wrong. It's like a left-leaning ideology. And you can see how there are left-leaning parts of it, but being ruled over by entrepreneurs and inventors, I don't think sounds very good in my opinion, especially when you see a lot of these people like Elon Musk in society. And I think Elon Musk's granddad's involvement in this movement says everything. And we can kind of see the influence with a lot of Silicon Valley, in my opinion. So an article by CBC, In Science We Trust, by Ira Bassin. So on October 13th, 1940, a Regina chiropractor named Joshua Haldeman appeared in a city court to face 2 charges under the Defense of Canada Act. His alleged offence was belonging to Technocracy Incorporated, an organisation that had been banned by the Canadian government several months earlier as part of a larger suite of groups it considered subversive to the war effort. Technocracy Incorporated was not a political movement. In fact, politicians or members of political parties were not allowed to join. It was founded in New York in 1933 as an educational and research organisation, promoting a radical restructuring of political, social and economic life in Canada and the US, with science as its central operating principle. There would be no politicians, business people, money or income inequality. Those were all features of what Technocracy called the price system, and it would have to go. There were no countries called Canada and the US either, just one giant continental landmass called the Technate, a techno-utopia run by engineers and other experts in their fields. In the Technate, everyone would be well housed and fed, all material needs would be taken care of, whether you had a job or not. Joshua Haldeman was leader of Technocracy Incorporated from 1936 to 41 in Canada, but left to go to South Africa soon after. In 1971, his daughter Maeve gave birth to his first grandson. His name was Elon Musk. Now, if you want a good insight into what this man was like, Haldeman was a staunch anti-communist from Canada. In 1950, he decided to move to South Africa, which was still ruled by the white apartheid regime. As it had been established in 1948, the regime was soon recruiting white settlers from North America, promising restless men such as Haldeman that they could live like princes. In 1960, Haldeman self-published a tract, The International Conspiracy to Establish a World Dictatorship and the Menace to South Africa, that blamed the two world wars on the machinations of both Jewish financiers. So I say that just to explain to you the types of people this attracted. Elon Musk's granddad, massive anti-communist, massive anti-Semite, massive fascist who moved to an apartheid state to enjoy the benefits of being a white settler. And these are the guys involved in a movement that wanted to reshape society where inventors and experts and scientists ran everything in essentially an authoritarian structure where you would have your material needs met, which might sound good to people. It seems like a dictatorship of the inventor class. You'd imagine people who make things like social media believe they're part of this today. And I'm not saying they all believe in this themselves, but it's clear there is some sort of influence in this way of thinking. I actually think Technocracy could be a good influence for like a new BioShock game, because it does give me very similar vibes to Ayn Rand, who of course inspired the first BioShock game with her writing. Now, just the final say on the Technocracy and the Technate stuff. A lot of people who invent things think, you know, it's all down to their individual brilliance. Like, they're not building on the blocks that were established by humans over like millennia. Everyone who created the theory behind it or created the technology they use, no, it's down to their individual brilliance. And people believing in that themselves are not the types of people you want to rule a society. Because firstly, they think everyone is inferior to them, and they think everything they've achieved is totally just like down to their individual brilliance. And it's a very like individualist look at this stuff, and this class of people ruling over us is of course not beneficial to anyone, even if they do take care of your material needs, as this ideology states it wants to. Seriously, imagine Silicon Valley like ruling the entirety of the United States, like just as an authoritarian government, because that's what a lot of these people actually want. Thankfully, we live in a better system where you can just like buy the government instead. I think that's better. But even though they're not explicitly influenced by the Technate, they are explicitly Randian cultists. Now, quick summary, I don't want to go into it because I think like most people know who Ayn Rand was, but Ayn Rand was an author of fiction, philosopher, and she basically mainstreamed something called objectivism or objectivist capitalism. And the most accurate way to describe it is it's an extremist form of individualist capitalism. And morality in the world is based on maximizing profit. Ayn Rand famously said that the natives in America deserved everything that was done to them because they were not using the land to generate profit. So I think that quote shows you how Ayn Rand's ideology leads to things like fascism, but you can also see why Silicon Valley billionaires and just rich people, why they like Ayn Rand, because In her work, she often talks about the virtue of the individualist entrepreneur. Atlas Shrugged is about a group of these people withdrawing from society, deciding we want no part of this society that leeches off our brilliance, and they enter a retreat while society basically devolves into chaos because we need the business class, we need John Galt, we need these great rich entrepreneurs to steer us into a better future. So no wonder like most Silicon Valley people love this book, even though I don't even understand how people like Ayn Rand's writing, because I think it's pretty terrible, despite the message being stupid as well. So an article by Metro Silicon Valley about Ayn Rand said, Steve Jobs, Peter Thiel, and Uber founder Travis Kalanick have all paid homage to Rand. On the occasion of Steve Jobs' resignation from Apple, Steve Wozniak told Bloomberg that he remembered Jobs as a young man. He was reading a lot of books. I think Atlas Shrugged might have been one of them back then. So Ayn Rand has also had a massive influence generally on American politics. Guardian article covering her. So her most significant early follower was Alan Greenspan, later to serve as the chairman of the Federal Reserve for 19 years. In the 1950s, Greenspan was one of the collective and would be among the mourners at her funeral. Greenspan is the link between the original Rand cult and what we think of as the second age of Rand, the Thatcher-Reagan years, when the laissez-faire free market philosophy went from the crankish obsession of right-wing economists to the governing credo of Anglo-American capitalism. Greenspan, appointed as the US central banker by Ronald Reagan in 1987, firmly believed that market forces, unimpeded, were the best mechanisms for the management and distribution of the society's resources. That view rested on the assumption that economic actors behave rationally, always acting in their own self-interest, the primacy of self-interest rather than altruism or any other non-material motive was, of course, a central tenet of Randian thought. So what we're seeing now, I guess, is the third age of Rand cultists. So you had this 1980s Gordon Gekko breeders good, just running throughout Western society and basically destroying Western welfare states, Western like nationalization of industries, and actually destroying the government's role in serving the people instead of completely serving capital. Because what you saw with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher was the selling off of national industries and also destroying unions, which both did in the UK. Margaret Thatcher essentially started destroying public housing, never recovered. Most of the problems of our day are in the UK and the US are caused by Ronald Reagan and his acolytes and Margaret Thatcher, and not surprising that so many of them were Randian cultists. And now we have the people who founded Uber, Twitter, the guy who founded Apple, the guy who founded Facebook, Donald Trump allegedly, people like Paul Ryan, people who ran the Federal Reserve. All of these people are followers of Ayn Rand's philosophy. And if we combine that with like the technocracy, what you're basically seeing is some sort of like techno-fascism. And like I said, Ayn Rand wouldn't call herself a fascist. Ayn Rand doesn't love the state. Ayn Rand didn't love any state programs despite dying on welfare and growing up in the USSR. So fascism doesn't always look like the same thing, right? So we imagine fascism, when I say it, of like 1930s Germany or Italy or Spain or something, right? But you could say that India is becoming a fascist state, and that's fascism existing within a democracy. And you could easily argue that the US is well on its way to becoming a fascist state, and these people, guided by Randian objectivism and guided by things like technocracy, they are buying US democracy for Silicon Valley. And they believe that is the quickest way for them to rule over us even more than they do. It doesn't matter that Mark Zuckerberg basically nearly has a monopoly on social media, apart from like one or two holdouts, and also in that as well, although Trump has said he doesn't want to ban TikTok, part of the TikTok ban is that TikTok sells it to a US company, right? JD Vance is firmly in bed with people like Elon Musk, who owns a social media platform. I wonder what's going to happen there. Is a group of American investors going to buy TikTok for the US with the help of Donald Trump? Yeah, that seems like that's what's going to happen. And basically Donald Trump is going to serve the rich as president, but you're going to see more than usual a Republican government serving the interests of Silicon Valley, which has usually been pigeonholed as a Democrat thing or a more left-leaning thing when it has always been a libertarian thing. In my opinion, conservative libertarianism pretty much always leads to fascism and this creation of a free market system that basically destroys the government's role as something serving the people, destroys things like Medicare and Medicaid, destroys things like public housing and the NHS, and basically takes away any safety nets you have to make you, even more than you are, a complete slave to the market. And social media is already garbage for the human race, but it's a scarier thought that now these people will be even more in control of the US government, have less accountability from the government for safety violations, privacy violations, treating their workers like garbage, being able to rule over their companies like a king, like Elon Musk does with Tesla, SpaceX, and Twitter. So yeah, this is a bad thing for the world, it's a bad thing for America, and these libertarian fascists in Silicon Valley are firmly intent on achieving their bizarre aims, whatever they are, and they will destroy the planet to do so because they really don't give a shit. That's why they have plans either to colonize Mars in the far future or setting up massive bunkers in places like New Zealand because they know things like climate change are going to make the Earth a harder place to live. And you might as well plunder the US government and North America now so you can have the resources to run off into obscurity later when the whole world falls apart. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.
The brass will never say it, so I will. Good job, Agent.
I don't usually do many film reviews, so it's odd that I've done 2 in just a couple weeks. Understandably, I did one on the Sound of Freedom spin-off, Sound of Hope, which released over July 4th weekend, and you can go check out that video below to learn what I thought of it. And then in the comment section, a fan pointed me towards the trailer for Disciples in the Moonlight, an overwrought, heavy-handed, incredibly dramatic vision for a dark, dystopian future America where the Bible is outlawed and some brave souls battle against the Department of Homeland Security to get the Bible out to churches in the Midwest. With such a radically outlandish premise, I couldn't not watch this movie, especially when it came out as the Republican National Convention was spreading the exact same kind of Christian nationalism the people who make this movie are probably super into. Disciples in the Moonlight is the brainchild of producer, actor, director Brett Varvel, apparently. He's like the Hideo Kojima of terrible Christian movies. He's made a few small films in the past, but being that this actually made it to theaters, albeit under the Fathom Events banner, not a wide release, this is his most successful film ever, which is a very low bar because this thing really doesn't succeed in almost any way a film should. Disciples in the Moonlight is a very stupid film, laughably so often. I was the only person in the only showing of its first day of release, but despite the theater being empty, it was filled with my laughter. The big question you'll find yourself asking in this movie is why? Why was it made? Why do characters make a variety of choices? Why are the reasons the Bible is deemed offensive in the movie's universe and outlawed never brought up? Well, unfortunately, actually watching the movie holds very few of these answers, but I did it anyway, so let's talk about it. The film opens with the 2 main characters, Nate and Jake, who I constantly mixed up in my script when writing this. These are also the writers and producers of the film, which certainly bodes well. They're running an underground Bible mill that gets raided by the Department of Homeland Security, and they flee under gunfire. And this sets the tone for the movie. This is a film where nothing about the political state of the world is ever explored or explained. There's no nuance. There are just completely peaceful, good Christians and the violent, progressive oppressors using the government to try and kill them. We cut to the agents raiding their compound who says, "Sir, you better come check this out." And it's the Bible, like they discovered a cache of cocaine. I laughed out loud so hard at this scene, partially because the reveal is shot like a parody straight out of Tropic Thunder, but also because this movie will use nearly every action movie cliche line in its over 2-hour runtime, but they're never referring to anything serious, just like the Bible. We're introduced to the main villain, DHS Director Hazard.
Not one of those
yes, he is named like a G.I. Joe character. Mark Strong and Stanley Tucci were apparently busy, and honestly, this guy does a fine 80s movie villain. He seems to know this is a pile of shit and takes an opportunity to add a side of ham to his acting reel with this role. The 2 escape, and we switch to an old man watching TV. In this world, TVs are present everywhere, and they are exclusively tuned to mainstream news. Social media doesn't seem to exist. Social media doesn't seem to exist, and I don't even recall newspapers. Instead, this is how the world building is conveyed at all times. People just have TVs on in the background, and that's how you know what's happening. We're hearing a speech from the president where he's saying 2 years ago, we saw what happens with unchecked religious zealotry, which resulted in some unexplained event that in turn led to the, quote, archaic and hateful words of the Bible being replaced with a new welcoming text. Now, there is just one scene in this entire film where this is even explained a little bit further, but if you're wondering if they mean things in the Bible like men giving up daughters to be assaulted, incest, beheadings, torture, or slavery, none of that is actually addressed. The second big laugh of the movie came in this scene when the president talks about a Bible buyback program like they're guns. We then follow old Pa Kettle when he just so happens to break down directly in the path of a train and dies on the railroad tracks as he's going to work. Then back to the excuse for a hunky action movie main character who shakes his head disapprovingly as the new woke Bible is given out on street corners. This is the best they can do for a dark dystopia, a world where the Bible is banned, but pretty much everything is the same. No cities in ruin, no adverse effects explicitly shown. The only thing that's really different is the Bible. Nate meets his wife in the diner as a random woman is harassed by federal agents who use a CG hologram scanner to show she has, quote, 41 counts of hate speech on her phone, including the original Bible. Nate is worried after the Bible barn gets burned down, but a mysterious stranger in the restaurant gives them a secret symbol, and a second later turns out to be somebody called the Apostle. He gives Nate a secret mission. Suddenly, this is a heist movie, and 2 sentences later, for some reason, we have to get Bibles to 7 underground churches in a 2-hour window. Why specifically a 2-hour window? No idea. Never explained. Nate agrees to help because, according to him, Homeland Security hasn't ID'd them. He gets into an argument with his wife where he says that God has protected them from being arrested, so they need to go on this mission. But I guess, like, fuck the people God hasn't protected, like the dude in the truck or the woman who got arrested in the restaurant. Anyway, she says we need a team, and then we basically get a heist crew montage. But first, Nate goes to meet Jim, who has a mysterious past. As we will find out, Jim was involved in the Springfield incident, which, unless I wasn't paying attention or it was just explained when I went to the lobby for some Juju Fruits, it's never actually explained what that is in the movie. Long story short, Jim's wife died when they fled federal agents for having Bibles, I guess. The HHS bald guy has a corkboard in his office and is nefariously plotting. See, it turns out that they are aware of Nate's plan the entire movie. Yeah, the thing Nate said like a scene ago about not being identified, total bullshit. We cut back to a generic white nationalist template that is Jake, who gets in a fight with his wife because he's not there for his family but is out spreading the good word. By the way, every scene in this movie has emotions go from 0 to 1,000, and the actors here are going for the Academy. He says she's doing a bad job raising their kid, but he's also absent too. He's kind of just a dick. I don't know, man, maybe stop this Bible thing before it gets somebody hurt and be there for your family. So Jake goes over to Nate's house, which is already under surveillance. Like, there's never a point in the movie where the security isn't watching them. So what Nate said about Homeland not having their ID is just completely wrong. And this monitoring is constant. Like, there's literally never a point in the film where DHS isn't 2 steps ahead of them. And they even know this later. We then get introduced to the team. We've got Ty, the one black character in the film. We have Cody, a firefighter who gets an inexplicable and lifeless romance with Jim's daughter. And then there's JJ, Nate's brother, and his friend Pete, who are the comic relief of the film because it really needed that. Nate says, quote, "This job is unlike anything we've done before." And suddenly the soundtrack is trying to convince you you're watching fucking 24. So when the Bible barn burned down at the beginning, their supply was apparently destroyed. So they need to find Bibles to deliver in the 2-hour window 2 weeks later. And then Nate goes onto a speech about how they can be the couriers of hope. And this is the "if you want out, now's the time" moment. I wasn't joking about every cliche line from a heist thriller or undercover action movie you've ever seen, except these are played without a hint of irony, and I couldn't help but laugh out loud every time. This is like a heist thriller if instead of money, it was about like 7 Bibles. As they're leaving the house, I guess Pete gets abducted to spill the plan, and the HHS guy calls his mom as ominous music plays, like it's a hostage situation for this internet door over Bibles. Jim and Nate get into a fight, and Nate says, "Have you ever read that government Bible? It's nothing close to the living, breathing word of God." Jim forbids his daughter from going on the race. Then men in black suits show up to arrest Jim. So that's two members of the team who have already been under surveillance and detained. But remember the entire plan. The reason Nate was chosen by the apostle was specifically because he hadn't been ID'd yet. Jim goes home and uncovers an old box with memoirs of his wife, and this is his call to action moment. JJ goes to get Pete, who got released from DHS, and we get a scene of Pete yelling at his mom straight out of the wedding crackers. Like, this is just this scene exactly.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
We have another newscast. They're using the old man in the truck at the beginning as a false flag scapegoat to make the apostle look bad, saying that he was a radical Christian terrorist who staged a train attack. So with all of this going on, Jim finally agrees to join Nate, and he says that if he's in, they're gonna do things his way. They start the planning montage and codename each church, and they're gonna use the Bibles from Jim's wife's collection. So apparently Jim's dead wife just had a collection of Bibles that were just sitting in the basement. So that's that plot point instantly resolved and never brought up again. Like, there's the setup of a lack of Bibles being a point of contention, but there's literally no reason for it because a scene later, it doesn't matter. And also, this doesn't matter as a resolution to that for reasons I'll explain later because they don't even use the Bibles. They all plan to split up. It's not actually a heist movie because they're all going on their individual little side quests. To do research, JJ and Nate go to investigate drones because apparently there are drones that monitor the Ohio border for drug runners. So when they go to investigate, the drones like almost open fire on them immediately. And these aren't just like piddly Radio Shack drones. They're depicted as basically the hunter killers from Terminator. We get a dramatic chase as they escape, and we also never see the drone for budget reasons, I'm assuming. But this scene is literally pointless. They go somewhere specifically with the knowledge that there's drones, and then they just run away from the drones. The drones are, by the way, never brought up again in the movie. Like, it's just pointless. This is just padding. Then we get a heart-to-heart conversation between the two brothers where JJ says how the Bible is offensive and Jesus loves us for who we are. And then Nate gets all pissy. JJ says, the Jesus I believe in loves me for who I am, kind of making him a little gay-coded, by the way. So JJ is basically just the libcuck stand-in for anyone who's been on a Twitter argument with the writers of this movie. The movie has no interest in actual conversation beyond the most basic concept of theology. Christians are uniquely good. No other religions are ever addressed, and the entire world in this movie is against Christians, except they're not, because as we'll see later, there are a ton of people who secretly agree with the apostles and just don't want to be labeled domestic terrorists by the media. The music swells, and during the argument, Nate says, if you change one word in the Bible, you're essentially trying to take the place of God, which is a fucking incredible line for a movie about the Bible, a book that has famously been rewritten for centuries. And when I say the music swells, it is like the climax of a World War II battlefield drama. Next is the worst part of the film, as the crew all get character building moments that consist of sitting around a table talking about why they're doing this, to spread hope and the word of God. They're also trying to come up with a way to smuggle the Bibles, as they worry about checkpoints on state lines. Again, checkpoints in this movie specifically for contraband Bibles. Back at the DHS, they're just watching this crew all day, but can't arrest them because apparently they haven't broken the law. Hazard does a literal, I am the law moment when his underlings say, without breaking the law, we can't bring them in if they don't have real Bibles. Then we get a scene of JJ sitting in the modern church where they've changed John 3:16 to some modern woo-woo bullshit, everybody is welcome nonsense. And this is a serious moment before Nate's brother, by the way, the third member of the crew, is abducted by DHS. He gets released after getting roughed up, apparently, because it was just a scare tactic, and Jim gives the movie's fourth rousing speech where nothing has happened as the generic music builds and he talks talks about being afraid of losing things, and suddenly he realizes that his wife dying was part of God's plan, and he says the right version of John 3:16 without all that commie bullshit about love and understanding. Quote, "I can't think of a better reason to find life than giving mine for the word of God," he says, and everybody is inspired by this and just locks in. "These people need the word of God," one of them says, and the music hypes up like a Michael Bay montage with an American flag in the background. And then, again, no tension whatsoever, it's revealed Nate's brother is a turncoat and is helping the HHS. Again, because the bad guys have known their entire plan and been onto them since the beginning and has always had the upper hand, there's no tension in this movie at all. Everyone has a mournful moment to talk to their significant other, and like over an hour into the movie, we finally get to like the main plot. So again, unless I missed it, there's no reason why it has to be in one night. That is never explained. It's revealed that Jim is going back to Springfield, and they say a prayer before Michael Bay knockoff music kicks in like this is a Modern Warfare 2 menu. You don't believe me? Listen to this shit. They all go their separate ways as people pray, and the Department of Homeland Security, which has been tracking them the whole time, is hot on their trail like no fucking shit. So on this night where they all had to plan to do it at the same time, they're all being tracked, and then they get put on national news as domestic terrorists, even though they're just peace-loving Americans. Jake also apparently abducted his kid for this mission? Why? So the word gets out, and there are checkpoints set up, and Nate gets stopped at one, Ty gets stopped at one too, and they're like searching these trucks like they're looking for illegal immigrants. The movie is now operating with like 4 different stories, and none of them are particularly interesting or good. Nate and JJ managed to make it through a checkpoint, but surprise twist, they're actually being followed. Just like they have been the whole movie, because the DHS guys apparently think they'll lead them to the apostle. Jim goes to a rest stop where the news is playing and his face is on it, because this is a world where everybody watches cable news, and the biggest story in the world is apparently these 5 people just delivering Bibles. Cody and the girl hear about the ongoing manhunt from the guy they're hitchhiking with, who of course happens to want to help and really believe in them. Jake leaves his abducted son in the car to go hand a Bible to somebody in the park in the middle of the night. This is all believable, normal person behavior and not setting up anything incredibly obvious. Meanwhile, Nate and his brother get surrounded by the Department of Homeland Security, and JJ just pulls out a piece and starts blasting. There's no setup for this, and it's not really congruent with the character they've set up at all. They run across the nearest open field to an abandoned train car, and unsurprisingly, they're surrounded. And Nate learns his brother betrayed him. And this is the dark climax of the film, I guess, because concurrently, Jake, also meeting the people in the children's park in the middle of the night, gets surrounded. It's a setup. And his dumbass kid almost gets shot trying to come out to hug him. And there's a tearful moment as Jake says goodbye to his son, who he abducted and put in this position for no reason. And suddenly the Department of Homeland Security agent who's arresting Jake, who's been a minor recurring role in surveilling them the whole movie, has a vendetta against them because his wife was on the derailed train at the beginning, so he blames them for her death. And with a gun to his head, Jake gets asked, "Are you a disciple of Jesus Christ?" And the Department of Homeland Security agent just caps him, execution style, point blank. An unarmed man with like 30 people and his kid watching. He literally did the thing that Christians made up happened at Columbine. I was so stunned at this, I could not stop laughing. Back to Nate and his brother. They get smoked out of the train with some tear gas, and seeing the gun that JJ has, they both get unloaded on immediately, and they slowly look at each other and hold hands as they die. And it's basically the fake death scene from Tropic Thunder. I'll give them this. I was surprised that they just like kill all of their main characters literally for nothing. Oh, and just a quick tonal shift back to the main story. During all this, Jim is going to visit his mom in an old folks home. And as Jim sits with his mom, who doesn't look much older than Jim's actor, he gives her his jacket. And we go back to Ty for a second, who also drops off a jacket, and you can kind of see where this is going. We very quickly find out the Bibles are actually hidden in their jackets. Except the Bibles aren't hidden in the jackets. They're printed inside the fabric of the jackets with black light ink. And literally everybody who discovers this, from DHS agents to Jim's mom, smile at the miracle being delivered to them, because secretly everybody is pulling for them to succeed. Even though apparently the whole world is against them, secretly there are people everywhere who actually believe in them. This is not a thinly veiled hope about the director and writer's political leanings at all. So again, also remember that issue that was brought up at the beginning of the film?
Keep it up, Agent.
That was solved by Jim's wife's cache of Bibles? Those just never came into play again because of the blacklight thing. Nate gets dropped off at home by a DHS agent who I guess found his Bible, and that's all fine for the people who were on a national manhunt. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters in this world. Why start having any continuity now? They all just go back to their families and keep doing their Bible smuggling, even though everybody knows who they were and saw their faces and had their names. We flash forward 8 years later to a random kid in an attic recording a dire message about how they're being hunted and they're getting closer every day. Now, 8 years later, apparently even knowing a Christian can get you thrown in jail or worse. Turns out this is Jake's kid who was in the park and saw his father die. And his mother is apparently okay with him following in his father's footsteps, the same footsteps that made him fatherless and left her without a husband to help raise her kid. This is all normal. This is how normal people act. And they continue to do the jacket thing even 8 years later. Even though we know people at the DHS found out and know about it, but they just haven't taken action to stop it in any way. Like, this is a world in which there are cyberpunk scanners to say if you have any hate speech in your car, but you can't tell if a Bible is printed in blacklight inside of a jacket. I'm honestly I'm still kind of stunned by this movie, to be honest. The fact that so many people looked at the script with plot holes big enough to drive a truck through and decided it was still a good idea to make this is galling. And that's before you get to the ludicrous premise that goes out of its way to depict modern Christians, an overwhelming political majority, by the way, as persecuted and a minority. The on-the-nose depictions of oppression cribbed from actual minority groups like state-enforced executions and the not-so-subtle Underground Railroad analog would be offensive if I thought for a second the filmmakers had the brain power to consider how stupid they were. But I deeply, sincerely don't think the people who made this movie are smart enough to understand something like that. Disciples in the Moonlight is a film for people with no actual problems who have to invent elaborate fantasies to worry about. Fantasies that don't have any actual world building. This is a world essentially the same as ours. There's no notable differences in economic stability, wars, politics, or anything you might expect from a dystopia. No, this is simply a very, very, very stupid story about why Christians are always innocent, selfless, loving people unjustly targeted by the oppressive hand of progressivism. And I hear you asking, is it at least funny enough to watch ironically with friends? If you have some friends, maybe. The problem with this movie is that it's well over 2 hours long, including stretches where just like nothing happens. I skipped over entire scenes because just nothing is going on. People are just sitting around talking about nothing. Even in action scenes like the drone scene, nothing actually happens. Maybe check it out, but make sure you're good and plastered though. And that's really the only way I can recommend this thing. And if you can believe it, there is still another faith film this season, the Epic Times Jailbreak movie. So, yippee. If it's terrible in a fun way, I may do a video on it. I'll check it out otherwise. But otherwise, stay tuned for several big projects I have coming up. I just wanted to do this small video because I know people want a little bit more edited content, and I've been doing a lot of stream highlight videos in between my larger projects, which just take a lot of time, and I'm still doing this as a full job. So if you would like to help alleviate some of that financial pressure, check out the links down below, or check out my Patreon so you can be listed with all the cool cats scrolling across your screen right now. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all the things. Help me get to 100,000. And I will see you all later. Considering the gravity, the severity of what Trump wants to enact, in particular as it applies to Democrats pursuing office and progressive candidates pursuing office afterwards. Like, as much as people want to talk about, and the things in Project 2025 and Agenda
This off's
47
a bit raucous for the
are
echelon playbook, but I'm sure you'll
dire
manage.
in terms of enforcing like Christian nationalism, enforcing things
two,
like outlawing
one.
pornography,
Secure those capture zones,
abortion
Agent.
rights, stuff like that.
Friendlies capturing Zone A.
Those are things that generally could be undone, right? You can,
Capture
a presidential
zone
order can
secured.
wipe some of that stuff away. The truly dire aspects of Trump's plans have less to do with that and more to do with cementing the foundation of a fully
Target
right-wing, autonomous, like, intergovernment.
Capture Zone A is at risk.
Little more than others. I think they feel uncomfortable with outward displays
Hostiles hold
of
all capture
racism.
zones.
And I think
Start making some noise,
the
Agent.
Republicans have to
Team
be
capturing Zone
very,
C.
very careful, and they won't be because they're not capable of it because they don't realize how they sound to normal people. So we'll see. It will not be Yang, I can assure you. It will not be Yang, and it will not be Bloomberg. This is where we're at. I think Joe Biden now has, can be unleashed to attack Trump. He can, be out there to espouse the really positive things that the Biden-Harris administration has done. I think Harris is going to be, this is bad news for Bibi Netanyahu. I think Harris is definitely to the left of Biden on Israel-Palestine because, frankly, everyone in the Democratic Party is, for the most part. Shapiro may be the only one who was even in this conversation who wouldn't be. So that's good news on that front. She will name a vice presidential running mate within the next couple of weeks. I would imagine it'll be announced right before the convention. Super exciting, folks. Super exciting because I think everybody now has a sense of Democrats can win this now. And if you look at those Senate numbers and you contemplate, what are those numbers going to look like if those numbers hold and Harris is bringing maybe younger people out or just bringing other Democrats out, this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be a big deal. So I'm probably going to sign off and send Emma the login so she can do a video as well, because I have a feeling she's very, very excited right now. All right, folks, so stick around because I have a feeling Emma's going to come on in about 5 minutes. I don't know how anybody could say that Harris has no chance. I mean, the polling is the polling. I frankly think that a generic Democrat is, and not only, I want to keep just one more thing. You look at the polling that Harris has had, understand, she has had those numbers, and all of them had those numbers without being a candidate, without being able to do anything positive. All right, make any type of positive argument. Anyways, folks,
or if that's the public narrative. And that sways people so much. Just the simple illusion of competency. The idea that somebody looks good and can speak well in front of a camera. At the end of the day, that is what so many people want elected. Because unfortunately, a lot of comfortable people in America, and granted, I think we're getting to a point where a lot of people are less comfortable. A lot of people are starting to wonder, hey, why are rich people making more money? I'm not making any money. Why can't I afford just regular bills working full time? Why can't I afford a house and with a yard and a kid like my parents did? I think more people are slipping over to that edge, which is a separate issue. But by and large, there are still so many people who just want to go about their lives and not really think about politics because it's complicated. There's a lot to it. And they just want to hire somebody that they think will be competent and will just get the job done. And if Kamala can convince people that she's that candidate, she absolutely can beat Trump. You must change the notification sound to the Kamala lap. Neurotrek, thank you. Aram Memnock, thank you for following. Kami Wim, thank you for following. I am the Batsy and Scare Lupus and Bellicose Bellsprout. I am the Batsy, thank you for Prime. And Wintry, thank you for Prime. Kamala Harris pushes White House to be more based.
I'll take 3 objectives on your OPSAC. Assault them at your discretion.
Fucking based? Underscores how Democrats are walking a fine line between pro-Israel and pro-Palestine. This was 12:14.
Your mission
Wants the White House to show more concern publicly for humanitarian damage in Gaza, where Israel locked in a bloody and prolonged battle with Hamas. According to 3 people familiar with Harris's comments. See, that's another. Okay, then I'm. If that could actually see.
Hostile suppressed.
Here's another thing, and
Capture zone secured.
this is just a cursory guess, right? This is pure speculation. But Biden comes from an era of specific Israel loyalty. And we've seen that time and time again. Like his loyalty towards Israel, unflinching, unquestioning, because they're an ally. And especially since the time he was like relevant, like they always have been. Even as he's you know, there will be people coming out like Biden staffers say he's expressed frustration with Netanyahu. And I know Biden is just swearing up and down. He's like, fucking come on, baby, cut me a break here. Like, just stop killing civilians for a little bit. I do not think Kamala is cut from the same cloth. And the fact that she is showing this, and granted, this was in December, right? This is just a couple months into the campaign that Israel is currently waging. But I think this shows a lot of promise. And the reason why, if we haven't heard, because this is the first time hearing of this, I believe the reason why is probably because, especially during an election season, you don't want your inner circle to feel discordant. You don't want people to know that, oh, there's dissension in the ranks, that people are disagreeing about these big policy decisions. You need everybody to feel united. And so that's why I'm willing to bet we haven't heard more about this. And I really hope we hear more.
Hostiles on the scope in Zone B.
If Kamala gets the knob, she will probably be able to debate. I would love to hear, I think that is probably where we would hear the most about this in a actual manner. But like, yo, if
Pelosi voiced support for an open nomination process if Biden drops out. That is the reason why I'm going to be talking about what AOC said today, because turns out she is right on that. She was right about the chaotic lack of unity behind like Kamala Harris. I mean, I said she's either lying, which I don't think she is, or she's being brutally honest and like breaking caucus and like revealing something that's pretty significant. And it turns out she is correct on this. This is the one thing that I've said is like a worse option than just going with Brandon. There's reporting right now on Nancy Pelosi saying that she'd be up for an open contest, an open convention. And I think that is genuinely a devastating idea. I don't think it's a good idea at all. Pelosi voicing support for an open nomination process if Biden drops out. It quite literally immediately proves what AOC was saying about the Democrats not having like a clear-eyed vision on a swift replacement. Some California House Democrats don't want the process to replace the president on the ticket to seem like a Kamala Harris coronation. And I think that is a genuinely bad idea. I think that spells chaos. It spells disorder. There is no world in which the entire American voter public that is like interested in voting turns around and says like, yeah, I like that the Democratic Party, which are supposed to be the adults in the room, cannot get their ducks in a row before the goddamn convention. This CNN article quotes you as a Democratic operative. I'm coconut pilled. I just want this to stop, said one well-known Democratic operative referring to an online meme that is taken off from an old video. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
No, chat, that's not me.
Capture zone
They did
secured.
not ask me. This is an anonymous quote from a Dem operative that is well known. Why would they put me down as a Dem operative? Why would I give an anonymous quote? Your confidence in Kamala seems wild, to be honest. What Americans want is a new ticket. They want someone they can be happy with, and that will never be Kamala. Kamala is new. Kamala is young.
compromise.
If Kamala has a solid team around her, which she currently doesn't, with good messaging, you absolutely could make a decent job out of Kamala Harris.
Zone A.
She's 59. Yeah, guys, we're talking about the president. She's 32 years younger than the current person on the ticket.
We
Or
secured
not
the zone.
32, sorry, 22. You're right. I feel like you're radically overvaluing Kamala and undervaluing the interest of chaos.
Hostile
No,
forces have
the
the
benefits
advantage.
of having more attention and more eyeballs on an open convention
Enemy
do
forces
not
on zone A.
outweigh the consequences of having an open convention. If you guys think this is chaotic, an open convention
forces
where
on
like
zone B.
everyone is talking about, oh my God, the Democrats finally got their wishes. They finally got Joe
Secure
Biden
all
out,
zones
but
from
now
the
they can't
opposing
even
force.
fucking have a consensus candidate. That is real chaos. You have not seen real chaos until you see what that looks like in the media. That plays itself out as total disorder, full tilt. Right now, there's like a little bit of will he, won't he situation. There's a little bit of interest. But if they were to replace the ticket immediately, swiftly, and then start moving on and be like, this is the new party, this is the new modus operandi. We're going to take it to the next level. We're going to take Joe Biden's vision and legacy, and we're going to take it across the finish line. And we're going to do even more than we did before. And they have solid messaging around it, and there is confidence. That's very different than like literally in the middle of f***ing August, at the end of August, still not having a f***ing candidate. I think that absolutely rips away the final, like the limited amount of confidence that people might have that the Democratic Party is still like, you know, doing the right thing,
Zone
and
compromised.
are the adults in the
Friendly
room, because you
forces on
have to
zone
remember
B.
the Democratic Party being the adults in the room is the number one benefit that they have over the Republicans. The Republicans are always chaotic. The Republicans are basically violent in their legislative agenda, but also beyond that, they can't figure out which direction they want to go in. Some of them try to be more moderate. Others are openly being contentious and openly being aggressive towards women's bodily autonomy in ways that remind people that they took away abortion. People look to the Democratic Party as the party that's going to defend democracy. People look to the Republican Party as the party, whether good or bad, as the party that's going to do their willing, okay? Do
He's
their
in
bidding,
danger.
and follow
Contested.
through on their agenda, no matter how chaotic and undemocratic that agenda might be. Absolute brain dead takes. Biden dropping out now is literally handing Trump the election. So f***ing dumb. You just came in here with zero analysis and just vibes, okay? Just came in here hot and was like, no, you don't understand. The 82-year-old that everyone understands is brain capacity is deteriorated is actually the best possible person. If they do a quick swap out, it won't work, dude. Kamala Harris also brings back certain demographics immediately into question. Like, the average American doesn't think as much as you guys do about politics. That's something you have to remember. I love this chatter said, fuck the commies. The average Gen Zer even is going to be like, oh yeah, that's a younger person. I'm interested. I'm invested. That's why I say what Kamala Harris does, if she is appointed as the nominee, is very important in terms of messaging. Very, very important in terms of messaging. Because like when people are locked in and they go, oh, this is a new fresh face, this is a more vibrant candidate, is a more dynamic candidate, then she has to play that part. Then she has to play that role. If she's barred out like she's been goofing around the entire time for the past 4 years, then it's going to be harder. Easier than Joe Biden, but hard nonetheless. Because every single person that is polling for Biden right now, in every single poll that is being conducted, is going to vote for whoever the fuck the blue person is. Because their motivations for voting for Biden is not because they love Biden. Their motivations for voting for Biden, as demonstrated by those exact same polls, is that they don't want Donald Trump. That ambition was alive and well in 2020, and it certainly is alive and well in the 2024 election. We know that. We've seen it. Every poll shows that reality. No matter who is at the top of that ticket, they have all of Biden's votes that they will secure, and plus some more on top of that. This is the calculation that I'm making. The calculation I'm making is that there are no Biden or busters in the same way that there were Bernie or busters, right? Even though those were marginal as well. This is the part where libs say you can't trust the polls. I know. If you believe that, why not have an open convention? Oh, I've told you already. The reason why I don't think an open convention is a smart idea is because then you actually do have some people who are like, well, I'm a loyalist for Newsom. It's kind of like this. Twitch streamers know not to poll which game to play next. And they just play it and they say, hey, if you like it, you watch. If you don't like it, you don't. Why? Because if you poll which game you want to play next, you will lose more people because the people that really wanted you to play one game will just out of anger not watch the other game. Not everyone, but a lot of people will turn around and go, oh, well, I voted for this game and now you're playing a different game. And you know what? Maybe I would have watched it, but I kind of don't want to watch that game that you're playing now. More importantly than that, an open convention is specifically dangerous because it shows that there is no consensus. Right now, Biden wants confidence from his party, and his party is not showing him confidence because they're seeing the polls. Biden is also relying on being able to get to the convention. True, democracy is always a bad idea. No, democracy comes after in the general election in this circumstance, but even then, it's not a real democracy. I'm just telling you guys, if you want my analysis on this, sometimes it's good to limit the options and then go, what do you want? Anyway, having said that, the Democrats already did that in the primaries. They stopped the primary process from actually occurring by literally making sure that no one else in the Democratic Party that had any viability ran against Joe Biden because they didn't want Joe Biden to go out and have to campaign in the primaries. They thought that he'd be weaker as a consequence of that. They thought that people would hear him and go, oh shit, he's old. That's precisely the reason why they already shut down the democracy part. Open convention is the best to restore trust in the section of the voter base like Hispanics, young people, industrial belt. None of these people are coming out because, wow, she's younger than Joe Biden. She's being thrown into a defeat with no plan. No, the reason why I think Kamala Harris is like the swift replacement ticket is because it buys time to retriangulate the messaging around her. Because, again, time is of the essence in this circumstance. Every moment is going to count, which is why Biden should have dropped out far before this moment. I'm not saying Kamala's chances are an absolute lock. I'm simply stating that Kamala's chances are better than Biden's, and given that this is a close contest right now, that's good enough and with only upsides. Having said that, however, if Kamala Harris is the swift replacement and then she sucks, then obviously that equation changes. Open convention, on the other hand, will create a panic environment, will show that the Democrats do not have a good lineage, like a good lineup, a good succession protocol. You will have people with their own dogs in the fight. You will have people that will, at a moment when the Democratic Party needs to be united, you will have people fighting against one another openly. The media will love the drama. Cenk disagrees with you on this. I know. I think he'll come around to this. Cenk has been right about the obvious need to replace Joe Biden because he's so old. Just like I was right on that front. Cenk and I have a disagreement on the open primaries. I think not open primaries, open convention. We have a difference in opinion on that front, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm telling you what my position is on the matter. The Democratic Party's number one benefit over the Republican Party right now is that they're supposed to be the adults in the room. The Republicans are divided. The Republicans are chaotic. The Republicans spell disorder. They're led by a guy who wants to be a dictator. These are all of the concerns that voters have about the Republican Party, and that's why they say they're never going to vote for Donald Trump. If Democrats basically cast that aside, if they just drop that, then they have nothing. They just have abortion. That's it. And as time passes, less and less people remember abortion and how Republicans took that away. I don't think Kamala Harris is the best possible replacement. You guys know who I think is a better replacement than Kamala Harris. I've said Gretchen Whitmer. I think J.B. Pritzker would be fine. I think there are better Democrats out there. They have proven track records. They're very popular, and they could captivate the Rust Belt. Having said that, however, Kamala Harris already being on the ticket plays a major role in this situation because it's a way to basically say, well, Joe Biden, this is the person that you chose to replace you. This is the person that you said would be great as president. That's why you fucking made her your vice president. It's a way to also save the Democratic Party's attitude, because then you can just simply say, no, you don't understand. Joe Biden always knew that Kamala Harris would be a phenomenal president, and that's why he chose her as his VP. This is a way to continue the legacy of Joe Biden and the legacy of the past 4 years and the policies of the past 4 years. Now, obviously, you and I might not agree with that narrative. What legacy? Who gives a shit? Joe Biden. But that makes a coherent replacement narrative that you can set, that you can campaign on. Random person coming in at the last second, on the other hand, makes it seem like maybe Joe Biden's legacy is dog shit. And then people go, well, why am I voting for the Democrats again then? Because the past 4 years, they just sucked then, I guess. They don't even have any confidence in their own administration. But I have confidence in them. Electoral politics, brain dash. My job is to do this. Yes, if you're not invested at all, and if you don't care, and you're like, oh, it's just a bourgeois democracy, who gives a both parties represent the interests of the wealthy, I agree with you, but this isn't for you then. You know what I mean? This is not analysis that you should be even interested in remotely, because it won't move the needle for you anyway. But what I'm doing here,
just that they're dumb because it actually affects their lives. Thank you.
Is for a much larger audience of people who do care about it, who do care about elections. And of course, I'm going to be covering and
policy matters. I'm sorry.
Analysis on the election.
Literally, all they care about is some bad,
that would be crazy.
Whatever.
If you don't disregard polls, why are you disregarding Kamala's terrible approval rating like Biden's? Great question. Kamala Harris's approval rating is VP approval rating. If the P approval rating is low, the VP approval rating is going to be low as well. Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket is an opportunity to completely change the agenda, or rather to refocus the attention at the presidential candidate Kamala Harris. And by the way, Kamala Harris ran a dog shit primary campaign, if you guys remember. The American people want someone who's not Donald Trump who can speak. I think that Kamala Harris is not Donald Trump, and she can speak. That's it.
And the pressure on President Biden is growing for him to step aside. When does a decision need to be made here?
Technically, not until the delegates vote. I mean, Democrats' convention is August 19th in Chicago. Many states have deadlines where names have to be formally submitted for ballots to be printed the days or even the day after the convention.
Narrative is cemented of her being a crooked, shitty politician. She laid it all on the line. She lost when everybody thought she was going to win. Not a chance. No. 6 Tanuki 9, $2. Give some insight on what happens if Trump wins.
Can anyone provide first aid?
I don't think it will be as, I've heard a lot of people speculating and being very doomer about it, which, here's the thing. The doomerism happens literally every presidential election on both sides. On both sides. I have been, when I was a teenager, it's hard to say I was really super deep into the ideology, but when I was a teenager, I identified as heavily conservative. Entirely different demographic than I am now, obviously. I was also very stupid and young, which, changes things when you get older. But
can run beyond the dates of the convention too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Kamala is also more popular than Joe Biden, which is not saying much because Biden is underwater. Kamala's disapproval is at 50%, approvals at 38.6. Biden's disapproval is at 56%, approvals at 38.5. A YouGov poll conducted more Democrats and independents who lean Democrat prefer Biden over Harris as the nominee, 47 to 32, while 21% said they weren't sure. Margin of error, 4%. Yeah, I'm telling you right now, this is the reason why I said the replacement must be swift, and then Kamala Harris has to start campaigning like a demon. Do I really think Harris can beat Trump? I think depending on how this campaign restructures itself and how it messages going forward, yes, I do. There are so many factors at play who her vice presidential pick is, because people will care about that this time around, perhaps a little bit more than they normally would, because this is a unique predicament. All of the polling being conducted right now is being conducted as Biden is refusing to step down. Is being conducted at a time when Kamala Harris's approval rating is still tied to the president, which is why it's lower than it would be. Like, if she's the governor of her own state, then her approval rating would be unimaginably high. This does not reflect the presidential ticket at all. It's like looking at Gretchen Whitmer's approval rating currently and then comparing it to Kamala Harris. It's like, no, that's her own person. That's being analyzed by herself. Kamala Harris as the VP, which is basically a secondary to the actual administration. If the administration is actually unpopular, then yeah, obviously Kamala Harris is going to be seen as unpopular as well.
Republicans actually want Biden to be atop the ticket because they think they can actually beat him and that he's the best person that they have the opportunity to take down. So you have two efforts sort of going on behind the scenes. Number one, you have this talk about suing to keep Biden on the ballots in these swing states. Republicans think that there are a number of local laws and regulations they can sort of look to, point to try to use the legal system to keep Biden atop the ballot.
That's weird. Perhaps that should be a inclination for those who are still holding out. I'm just saying. Perhaps any sound-minded person who wants the Democrats to win, or at least the Republicans to not win, would look at this motivation from the Republican Party and go, maybe the candidate is not the best possible candidate. You're kicking Joe Biden while he's bravely battling COVID? Yes, true. I am doing that. I don't care. You said for 4 years Harris has no charisma. Do you really think she even has a chance against Trump? Wait, Kamala Harris has no charisma. You're not wrong. Having said that, however, you know who else has no charisma? Joseph Robinette Biden, who can't even speak clearly, and yet he's still in a 50-50 deadlock. So yeah, no, I think I'm going to take my chances with the person who can speak with no charisma versus the person who can't speak with no charisma.
Again, most of it probably doesn't even come from Trump, right? Like he is a front man. He's a showpiece for people like Stephen Miller, for people like Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon and all of his friends and handlers and people at the Heritage Foundation and Young America First, all that shit, right? But this election is more than, thankfully now it's more than just Joe versus Trump, because I think for a lot of people, when they're like, oh, I'm not voting for Biden, is that they have in their mind, okay, 4 more years of Trump will show them. It's like, no, y'all don't get it. They want to try people for treason. Like not just a couple people, not just Trump. Right? Like, imagine if Biden took office and he tried not just Trump, but Pence and Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and anybody who sided with Trump for treason. Like, that's what they want to do. Now, will legal theory prevail? Would they be able to do that, hypothetically? It's hard to say. You would like to think we have checks and balances to prevent that kind of autocratic takeover. But at the same time, the Supreme Court has a conservative majority. On the Supreme Court, people owe Trump lifetime appointments and jobs. So people shouldn't be asking themselves if they're debating oh, do I vote for Biden or Trump? Which again, it's no longer Biden, thank God. But you shouldn't be asking yourself do I want Biden or Trump? It's more like, are you going to take the risk that in 4 years, the crime president, in an effort to do more crimes and evade the crimes he's being charged with, will not structurally change the base of American politics? in a way that, again, like this is another thing that will affect everybody. Like if you are of any minority group, outside of a straight white male that appears completely normal, it will affect you at a sociological level. Like you will feel it. Progay, thank you for following. Rienzo Renji, thank you for following. Kirumo Family Master, thank you for following. And Hamak, thank you for the 5 biddies. Don't forget Christian. Yeah, Christian is another one. We should absolutely still fight to make it better here, but anyone who can leave should. But I do note that the most vulnerable are the least likely to be able to leave. Yeah, like there is something. There's something intrinsically privileged about being able to say, like, not saying, "Oh, I want to leave," because like, fuck it, who wouldn't want to live in a nicer place? But being able to just pick up your shit and leave. It's like, okay, are you going to bring everybody with you? No. Then you are, like, I consider that a form of abandonment. Like, sorry. If you pick up and leave and move to fucking Iceland or Scandinavia or wherever you want to go, guess what? They're still going to be, like, that doesn't change the fact that there are going to be people suffering with those issues back here. And they have one less person to turn to. That's on anybody else. That's somebody, I would not begrudge somebody's personal choice, but that's just the way I see it. Kimberly C., I'm very conflicted. I legitimately like the United States, and I've wanted nothing more than to be a scientist, and now I'm scared that I need to abandon that. Don't be scared that you need to abandon that. No, see, that's why this is a good thing. Is that this is the first time. Two things.
Eliminate
okay?
all hostiles.
Because about a week ago is when Trump got shot. And I was doomerish myself on him. I don't blame myself. Because the way American politics works, I thought, fuck, he just won the election. At the time. Everybody did. So many leftists, so many people were saying that. I'll be right back. I have to go take care of something. I'll be right back. Do not let me forget, chat, when I come back, to keep talking about Trump getting shot. I'll be right back.
This is what you
Rogue Echelon agent activated sonar goggles.
It's pretty cringe. I'm sorry, but I do love you.
Welcome back to the Papa Me channel. How you doing? How you doing? Come on in and sit on down because today we're talking about very, very naughty doctors. We're talking about doctors of death. A nice little subject. You know, I always thought that every doctor was technically a doctor of death because in some way or another, I feel like a doctor has probably inadvertently killed somebody or has known somebody to die. I feel like doctors come in contact with death all the time. But in particular, these are...
This will be a fun report to write.
Just odd doctors. I don't know how to say it. I don't think that we're dealing with all doctors of death. Let's just say evil, evil, spooky, dark doctors.
And nurses.
And nurses. Evil medical professionals gone wrong. 4K, Unreal Engine, photorealistic.
Gone sexual.
Gone sexual. That's exactly right. Which doctors are supposed to be people that are supposed to keep you safe. You go to a doctor for good news or for help, right? Doctors are the angels on earth, dare I say. These people, you know, they defied that logic. They're the archangels. They're the demons. They're Dr. House. I want the good doctor, but instead House is walking in. Or should I say hobbling in, and he calls me dumb and fat, and then hobbles back out of the room. All right, anyways, we're gonna start our list off with Dr. Harold Shipman. The Angel of Death. Dr. Harold Frederick Shipman, infamously known as the Angel of Death, was a British general practitioner and is one of the most prolific serial killers in recorded history. Is that British history?
No.
All
of history.
All of history. The book world of history.
This is like the most infamous guy.
This is one of the most infamous guys. Okay. All right. Well, I'll take your word for it. Starting in the 1970s and continuing until his arrest in 1998, it is estimated that he killed between 200 and 250 of his patients.
That's 30 years.
That is 30. Well, a little shy of 30 years of murder. But at the same time, if you had a baseball card and you flip that bad boy over, that's a pretty impressive baseball card is what that is. He primarily targeted elderly women who lived alone, but also sought out both males and females of varying ages. Just knock off a couple old birds.
He's doing them a favor.
He's like, he's like, it's pretty much one of those things where it's like someone is trying to go through a door or whatever. You're basically there. You just like push them through anyways. Just go.
Or they're trying to jump off like one of those bungee cord things. And
yeah, they're nervous. They're like, I'm afraid to go. And he's just like, and like pushes open.
Okay, we are back, chat. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Trump shooting. Okay, so when Trump shooting happens, everybody on the left, like that was a doomer day. That was rough because we had just come off of bad marks for Biden. And going into the RNC, where we all watched this together, we all watched
domination. This op's a bit raucous for the echelon playbook, but I'm sure you'll manage.
We all watched just this craven masturbatory celebration of Trump over several days.
Secure those capture
right?
zones,
I watched
agent.
part of the first day. I watched the last day. I did not have the stomach for the rest of it. But here's the thing. After the shooting, when polls started coming out, there wasn't a bump. Not as big of a one as everybody thought. Because the only people who really bought it were Trump's base. They were already in the back.
For zone B.
And the RNC broadly, I think for a lot of people, is not going to help either. Like seeing washed up has-beens like Hulk Hogan and Kid Rock out there saying, "Oh, he's a great guy." I don't think it worked the magic they thought it would.
Capture zone secured.
Like there is still that level of cultishness around Trump that I think is off-putting to a lot of people, and I don't think the gunshot did enough, not nearly enough, to like push and make a case that he's like a strong or great candidate. Just that he got lucky once. Like, Snail Farmer, thank you very much for subbing the time. Thanking Nightmare Taco for sharing 100 biddies. Game over, man. Game over.
I'll allow it.
I think I fucking hope you're right, but this country has proven me wrong so many times. Yeah, like I could be wrong. I hope I'm not. But when people ask, like, is there a chance of Kamala winning? Not only is there a chance of Kamala winning, I think there's a chance that she fucking destroys Trump. Biden, way too close to call. Like, the dude was walking around barely able to form coherent sentences. He's just like, he shambles. Like, he doesn't even walk. He shambles. He's too old. This is not an ageist thing. It is a simple fact. Like, the man is too old for the stress that the job puts on the human body. And it's a lot of stress.
Looks like the shooting started already. Secure all zones, agent.
I think is able to have an air of competency.
I'm detecting hostiles on zone C.
I team Harris Bashar. We're gonna read about Bashar really quick.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
John Cena, Dave Bautista, and Rhea Ripley are where it's at, I guess. True. All right, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get my dog a treat.
Friendlies capturing zone A. You're down, but never out, agent. You got this. Hostiles on the scope in
Lady is
Zone
just
B.
like, Maza, it is time for a treat.
Zone secured.
Yeah, like that's the thing, is that Kamala is more likely to win than Biden. And I think that is what you need to get the edge over Trump. Yeah, no way Trump will want to debate now.
Zone A is at risk.
I honestly think he has too much,
Friendly's going for Zone B.
I think he has too much pride to turn it down. Mindful Flare, it does feel like this just breathed new life in the election. I imagine a lot more people are invested too in watching. Yeah. Like that was the thing. That's what I was talking about. Like it felt like so many people had just noped out and doomered out of the election. I think this is the game move to get people back on board. 3 days of how Biden is now wasted. Yeah. I didn't even think of it that way, but Azur Kotting, you're absolutely right. Like they spent 3 days talking about why Trump is better than Biden. Oh, dude. I don't think that's why they did it, but I think that is a really good knock-on effect.
Friendly's on B.
I think that's pretty good. That's masterful gambit, sir shit. Yes, masterful gambit, sir. Best time to do this was before the RNC. The second best time to do this is now, LMAO.
Looks like the shooting started already.
Vexy Poo, thank you for following. Yeah, so let's go over some of the VP picks. Casino, Julian Castro, Cory Booker, U.S. Senator from New Jersey, Pete Buttigieg, no. And Buttigieg again is one of those candidates I think the Trump campaign, or just conservatives in general, have too much shit that they can put on him as far as like the train crashes and infrastructure breakdown. Like that's not his fault, but you don't want a candidate who's not like bulletproof, really. Possible swing state candidates. All right. Roy Cooper.
Capture zone secured.
2016, we're looking to do state term limits. It would be
Zone B is vulnerable.
Stacey Abrams. Josh Shapiro. Shapiro beat a Trump-backed candidate in Doug Mastriano in 2022 as bipartisan support, and like Cooper has executive experience.
Team's going for B.
Let me look up Josh Shapiro, see what he's about. Josh Shapiro related to Ben Shapiro? Question mark? Google search. Josh Shapiro, awkward Thanksgiving, Ben Shapiro? Josh Shapiro. Yeah, Mastriano was I remember that fucking monster. Pritzker and Murphy. Who was the other one? Bashar?
Deploying EMP.
Yeah, let's look up approval rating for Bashar. 58 approval rating among independents, notable because 10% have registered independent with other political parties and could not vote for Democrat. That's not bad. Most popular Democratic governor in the United States. Huh. Why is Bashar so popular? And Kentucky, that's that good Rust Belt appeal for sure. Steady leadership during the coronavirus pandemic and later in his tenure during a series of natural catastrophes, deadly tornado, historic flooding, and ice storms. That's a fucking
failure, Agent.
Allows his party to maintain one of its most surprising footholds in the South. That, like, dude, that's again, when I was just talking about, you don't want somebody who just has name recognition like Buttigieg. You want somebody who's fucking bulletproof. This guy? Just reading this?
Allies on B.
Dog. Like, this is what you need on paper. I'm making a prediction.
Was that revenge?
This is what you want on a ticket to get those swing Republicans. The swing Republicans who would pick Trump over Biden, but don't like and necessarily want to vote for Trump. You want somebody who knows how to speak to people from red states, who has worked with them at their level and who is broadly popular with them.
And then I heard her scream, no, it hurts, stop it. And the screaming, it went on for a few minutes.
I've been cooperative up to this point, and now you're trying to frame murder on me, so.
No, we're not framing it. You're getting started. David, what part of we have the whole Blink video are you not understanding?
Maybe she just kind of went over the edge.
In 2020, Gretchen Anthony became so sick that she needs to be hospitalized. But her family had no idea that this was just the beginning of a twisted and shocking case. When no one heard from Gretchen for a few days, they began to fear that she wasn't just sick, she was missing. While investigators began the daunting task of untangling a convoluted web of lies, they never could have expected that the final clue to what actually happened would eventually come from Gretchen herself. In March 2020, 51-year-old Gretchen and her 43-year-old husband, David Anthony, were facing turbulent times. After David lost his job in February, he needed a distraction. Dreaming of distant beaches, David mapped out a solo trip, then packed up his truck. Soon he hit the road, leaving their home in Jupiter and started a long drive from Florida to California, while Gretchen stayed behind and worked. Things started to go south on the weekend of March 21st, 2020, when Gretchen told her friends and family she was feeling ill. Over the next few days, things only got worse. According to her messages, she sought medical treatment at a local emergency room and was transported an hour away to a specialized CDC facility in Belle Glade, Florida, after testing positive for COVID. Then her messages stopped completely. Her radio silence for 3 to 4 days left her family feeling worried, and after several unsuccessful attempts to locate her, they called the police for help. When authorities learned of David's travel plans, they knew they had to catch up with him. Of all people, he seemed most likely to offer clues as to Gretchen's whereabouts, and for all they know, she might have been along for the ride. A week after Gretchen first fell ill, David made it to Las Cruces, New Mexico. There were red and blue lights in his rearview mirror as officers initiated a traffic stop.
Go ahead and get your hands off the vehicle, please. Hands off the vehicle.
3, 2, 1. Neutralize the enemy team. Right in your wheelhouse, Agent.
He rolled his window up. Put your hands up. Hands up. Hands up so I can see him. Keep him up for me, please.
David is given minimal information from officers as he's handcuffed and detained.
Right now you're being detained for an investigation that's going on in Florida, okay? That's all I know. That's all I can tell you. You're not going to leave here until you talk to some detectives that are on their way.
Bewildered, David complies as authorities ask him for photos.
The best one.
Once the detective arrives, he takes David aside to explain what's happening and records the conversation.
All right, so this is about your wife. Okay, I guess she's been reported missing.
Last I heard, she was in a CDC facility getting treatment for coronavirus.
And see, what makes you believe that?
Our sister texted it to me.
Where's the CDC place at?
She didn't mention that.
According to David, he last saw Gretchen last Saturday, the 21st of March, the same day she later started to feel sick.
Have you had any contact with her since?
No.
No text message or phone calls?
But according to David, things were also a bit off back at home. Recently, their marriage had taken a turn for the worse.
Where does she live at?
She lives in Jupiter.
Do you live with her?
No.
According to David, he and Gretchen had recently separated, and court documents suggest the same. revealing that Gretchen filed for divorce exactly 1 month prior. Even so, things seemed mostly amicable between the two.
When the last time you talked to your wife, you said it was face-to-face. How was that conversation between the two of you? Was this
No argument. Even though we didn't get along, I love her. Just didn't see eye to eye on things, and it's just how things go.
What were some of the things you guys didn't get along about?
She never cooks. Sometimes you date a 5 thinking she's a 10, or vice versa. Maybe she thought the same with me. You know? Right.
After a quick glance in his vehicle, authorities can see Gretchen didn't tag along, so they're hopeful David can at least help shed light on her whereabouts. Unfortunately, David can't offer any more details than her family, but he does leave officers with one last thing. In light of her disappearance, something Gretchen mentioned in their last conversation is now leaving him feeling very unsettled.
Because when we talked, she mentioned, like, I don't know how much I can share without, like, you know what I mean? Like, she mentioned being in trouble.
Like David, Gretchen's friends and family have a gnawing suspicion that something may not be right, something that goes beyond just her health. Lately, her texts seem strange, with a shift in her communication patterns. Gretchen also sent her daughter Ava messages about limiting her cell phone use. Others received texts that she was in and out of consciousness, and doctors were considering a medically induced coma after she experienced partial lung failure. And yet, even when she said she required a ventilator to breathe, she was still able to send texts. Were these strange messages coming from someone else? Were the messages intentional red herrings from Gretchen herself? Only time would tell. It wasn't long before her ex-husband Jeff stopped buying the story altogether.
I found out from a dear friend who's a physician that firstly, they don't ship anybody off-site, or transport anybody off-site.
Right.
There is no CDC or coronavirus task force facility, and any patients that are presenting signs of coronavirus are treated at the hospital. That seemed awfully fishy to me. You know, I was smelling rats left and right.
But it was no secret that Gretchen has been under tremendous pressure lately. Between the divorce with David and other personal issues, it seemed possible that Gretchen just snapped. This prompts police to extend their search to both Gretchen and David's property. Unfortunately for David, after speaking with a detective, the New Mexico authorities execute a search warrant for David's truck and phone. Because he answered all of their questions and there's no evidence that he has any idea where Gretchen might be, the authorities let him go. However, he's now on foot without access to his vehicle, which has been taken into custody, leaving him stranded in the streets of Las Cruces, New Mexico with his husky, Toby. With David released, authorities continue looking for Gretchen. As there was no sign of her with David, they turn back to Florida. There they gain access to her home to perform a welfare check.
Shipper out 4-2, game 51.
But as soon as they get to the garage, what they find, which will soon be revealed, suggests something darker may be at play. In the meantime, they obtain a search warrant, moving carefully from room to room as they comb for clues in this strange case. Right off the bat, a few things stand out as potentially strange. They find a fallen picture frame in Gretchen's upstairs hallway and shattered glass in her bedroom. But some of the most valuable evidence authorities would find, evidence that would spell out Gretchen's recent activity, wasn't physical at all. Instead, it was waiting for them in her cloud storage. By now, it's clear that Gretchen has turned off her phone location completely. Although she was an active user of the Life 360 location app, she was no longer available to her contacts, including her daughter. Looking for answers, police turned to her neighbors and began knocking on doors. What they found out only increased their suspicions.
Did you notice that there was a stain in the driveway?
Yeah, I did notice the white stain.
Okay.
When Gretchen's sister spoke with another neighbor, she immediately relayed what she learned to the police, something that might explain the unusual stain in Gretchen's driveway.
A woman that lives behind Gretchen, her name is Christy, and I guess she smelled a strong smell of bleach. coming from the house.
Though he'd been released in Las Cruces, a Florida detective catches up with David over the phone. He drops a shocking new revelation, explaining that all the inconsistencies in this case are not what they seem. And in addition to her ongoing struggle with COVID, Gretchen was dealing with something far more sinister.
I spoke with Gretchen today.
You spoke with Gretchen today?
She's prepared a statement to give to you.
Okay.
Gretchen is receiving treatment for the COVID virus. Before she contacted the virus, she uncovered illegal federal tax fraud. She's in communication with OSHA and the Office of Special Counsel as she prepares a whistleblower case. Gretchen's terrified for her life. Someone was sent to her house to hurt her the other weekend.
According to David, Gretchen has never actually been missing. Instead, she's been in hiding, and she's not convinced that everyone in her life is safe. With David still on foot in New Mexico, authorities hope he hasn't gotten far. After 3 days, they catch a lucky break. He's spotted outside a local gas station in Las Cruces. This time, the circumstances surrounding his questioning are very different. The same Florida detective David spoke with on the phone arrives in New Mexico to speak with him directly and to deliver shocking news.
You are under arrest. There's a warrant for your arrest, and I'm going to explain that when we get back to the... Excuse me? What? Homicide. For who? Who do you think?
Once in custody, authorities explain the situation, but David doesn't stray from what he told the detective over the phone.
We have obtained enough evidence to obtain a warrant for your arrest for murder. Okay? I want you to understand that. She's alive. I want you to understand that. And what's most important to us right now is to find out where she is.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to tell you where she is.
Okay.
But I don't have that information. You have to ask her.
Detectives don't want to reveal all their cards just yet, but they're about to share a disturbing story that they stumbled upon by pure chance.
And we gathered a lot of information that I'm sure you're not aware of. There was a neighbor that heard the entire incident on Saturday morning at 6:30, who lives across the way. I want you to think about that real quick.
What incident?
The incident that occurred at Gretchen's home.
You have to give me more information.
In a stroke of luck, police uncovered a shocking piece of evidence as they canvassed Gretchen's neighborhood. A woman approached them, unprompted, with a chilling recollection.
Because on Saturday morning, I guess it was Saturday because of the pictures, but I heard, I was asleep upstairs in my room, and I heard a really serious woman scream, just screaming, like she was being attacked. And then I heard her scream, "No," and then I heard something about "it hurts, stop it."
As the witness walks the officer around the back alley to point out where these screams came from, she adds one more chilling detail.
The screaming it went on for a few minutes.
Okay.
It wasn't like, that's why I thought maybe it was kids, but there wasn't nobody was yelling help. Nobody was yelling help, which is why I didn't call the police.
And as police would later learn, this split-second decision may have changed everything.